Good morning and welcome back. In Buffalo today, U.S. President Joe Biden will be meeting with the families of victims. We are learning more about the people who lost their lives, and this investigation, it continues. CNN's Gloria Pazmino joins us live now in Buffalo. And Gloria, I want to begin with what we are learning when it comes to the victims. We heard names, and now we are hearing who they were. Good morning.
Good morning. That's right, Melanie. We're learning more about the investigation. It's unfolding as we speak. And part of the details we have learned over the last couple of hours, disturbing information about what the shooter was up to in the last couple of days leading up to Saturday, where he came here to commit violence, racial violence against the community of the east side of Buffalo. We've learned that the shooter was here as early as March, made 3 separate visits to the top supermarket here behind me, where he essentially was walking around the store, methodically learning the layout, understanding who was coming in and out of the store as he was planning his attack. We've also learned that the shooter was here the day prior to committing his attack on Friday. He was here, according to local authorities. We've also learned that the shooter wrote in detail about what he wanted to do, and he wrote about what he was learning while he was inside the store. He was writing about who visited the store, what he thought about while he was there. He described the aisles, where the bakery was, what part of the supermarket was located where. He specifically talked about the zip code. This community here on the east side of Buffalo is primarily made up of African Americans, and that is exactly what he was looking for as he sought to commit this hateful attack, which law enforcement officials have described as being racially motivated. The shooter making it clear that he wanted to commit violence against people of color in that racist rant that he published on the internet. That is certainly going to be part of the evidence that law enforcement officials are now poring over as they continue this investigation and mount the case against him.
And the violence apparently could have continued had he not been stopped at that point. Gloria, I want to talk about U.S. President Joe Biden, who is going to be arriving in Buffalo later on this morning. Do you have any details as to what that visit will look like with family members and the community?
That's right. And, Melanie, this is one of the hardest things for any president to have to do. This is the last thing you want to be doing, to have to go to any city in America to comfort families of victims that have been lost to senseless gun violence. And I think what the president is going to have to face here when he arrives is that there is, a lot of sadness and heartbreak and mourning that is happening here in this community. But there's also frustration and questions, because we now know that the shooter was, in fact, in the radar of local authorities. And that, as I mentioned, he had posted and been public on the internet about his plans and what he wanted to do. So there are people here who are wondering why he wasn't stopped, why he was able to get his hands on a gun, on any kind of weapon to commit this kind of violence. So the president certainly, having to comfort families, which is a part of what he has to do on these kinds of visits. But I think also people here on the east side of Buffalo will be demanding some sort of accountability.
Well, that was my next question, Gloria, because there's one thing about saying, thoughts and prayers and being there on that level. But then there's a whole other level of policy change and what could potentially happen. Have you heard anything more on that?
Yeah, and unfortunately, Melanie, we have been here many times before, and that is the unfortunate reality of this here in this country, with the debate around gun control and how to prevent this from happening. We know that the shooter was able to obtain that gun legally here in the state of New York. What he then did to modify that weapon to make it more powerful, more deadly, remains part of the investigation, whether or not he was able to do so legally. But as you said, the debate over gun control in America continues, and we've seen so many of these tragedies over and over, and policy doesn't change. And that's why I say that people are frustrated, because they see what happens in other cities, they see what happens in other places, and they never think it could happen in their own community, and then it does, and it seems like things have not changed. So that is a question and a challenge challenge for public officials here at the local and the federal and the state level, and something that will have to be answered over the next couple of months.
All right, Gloria Pazmino joining us live in Buffalo this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that update. And as mentioned by Gloria there, U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden, they will be heading to Buffalo. We will hopefully carry that live here on Breakfast Television when it happens later on this morning. 6:26 is what we're sitting at right now. We're going to take a quick break here this Tuesday morning, and we'll see you right after this quick break.